on the left is the monkey who gets cucumber. The one on the right is the one who gets grapes. The one who gets cucumber, note that the first piece of cucumber is perfectly fine. The first piece he eats. Then she sees the other one getting grape and you will see what happens. So she gives a rock to us, that's the task. And we give her a piece of cucumber and she eats it. The other one needs to give a rock to us. And that's what she does. And she gets a grape. And she eats it. The other one sees that. She gives a rock to us now and gets again cucumber. She tests her rock now against the wall. She needs to give it to us. And she gets cucumber again.
Right. So jealousy. So today we're going to be talking about confronting jealousy. And the monkey, like many of us, are fine usually with what we have until we start comparing it with what other people have. Babies, research has shown that babies as young as 6 months old, when they see their mom holding another child, or even sometimes holding a doll, a small doll, will begin to show signs of jealousy. Okay? Jealousy is something that I think begins to affect the soul, the heart, from a very, very young age. Bill, anyone know Bill? Bill Shakespeare, William Shakespeare? In his work, one of his works, he says, "Beware, my lord, of jealousy, it is the green-eyed monster." Jealousy is something that has affected humanity, affects us from our childhood, and continues to affect us as we get older. Some of us just grow up and continue to sometimes act like these little monkeys or these 6-month-old babies. As a quick review, guilt says, "I owe you." Anger says, "You owe me." Greed says, "I owe me." What does jealousy say? It's a tricky one. You owe me is anger, right?
God owes me.
God owes me. Jealousy, the nature of jealousy is that God owes us. And at first sight, it doesn't seem so clear. Okay? At first sight, we don't see our problem is with God. But when we think of jealousy, we think of other things that other people have that we don't have. We think that other people may have looks, skills, opportunity, health, inheritance, success, prestige. So we see other people having things that we don't have. And we think oftentimes that our problem is with other people. But in actuality, the problem is that God has given those people something that He very easily could have given to us. But He didn't. So our issue is actually with God. In Genesis chapter 37, you find the story of Joseph with his brothers. And I'm just going to read to you from Genesis chapter 37, verses 9 through 11. It says, "Then he dreamed, he being Joseph, dreamed another dream, and told it to his brothers, and said, Behold, I have dreamed another dream. Behold, the sun, the moon, the 11 stars were bowing down to me. But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you?" And his brothers were jealous of him. His brothers were jealous of him. He had been given a dream by God that they themselves had not received. God had showed him something that he would be great through dreams. If you will, in the Old Testament, it's really important to remember, to understand. In the Old Testament, that the way, like dreams, were oftentimes prophetic. People saw it as a sign that God was communicating to them. And so his brothers get jealous. God had given him something and had not given it to them. And yet, Joseph was among the youngest of his family. you find yourself looking at other people, probably in the way that Joseph's brothers did, and you look, say, they're so smart, they're so successful, they're so beautiful, they have so much skill, they're so gifted, and then right afterwards, you say, I hate them. I can't stand that person. Even if we don't speak it, sometimes we catch ourselves and we find ourselves feelings of resentment and jealousy towards those people. Most of us think that if God would have given to us what He gave to others, that our problems wouldn't be as bad. If I had just been a better communicator, I would have been more successful at work. I would have been able to get out of the debt that I'm in. If God would have helped me with giving me a little bit more patience, then I would have been able to maintain relationships better. Okay? And I wouldn't find myself single. If God would have given me a full head of hair, then I would have been dealt with differently. If God would have given me whatever it is that He gave to others, if He would have made me more attractive, I would have had easier time in high school. If God would have made me whatever it is, I would have been. So our problem is, what was God thinking when He shelled out all of the gifts, all of the talents, all of the beauty, all of the skills, all of the money? So I'll take you back to our example that we've been talking about over the last few weeks. Remember that this guy, the man, the father, the husband, when he left an element of guilt, because every time he now dealt with his family, he dealt with them feeling guilt, especially when his daughter asks him, why did you leave mommy? Or his son asks him, were we not good enough for you? We said that the mom and the children now have feelings of anger because they felt like he owed them something. Greed, he took, he felt like it was owed to him. It was owed to him. Jealousy would have said, if God would have given me a great wife or a great family or a great husband, I wouldn't be in this situation. Okay? Oftentimes, there's 4 elements that are present in a certain situation. So who's really to blame? Who's really to blame? What God did for others, He could have done for us. He owes me. He owes me. I work harder than other people, and yet they're more successful than I am. I'm a good person, and yet they're more successful. The pagans down the street, man, they're pagans. They don't even believe in God. I see what they do, and yet their life is blessed. Look what God has given them. Couldn't He have blessed me in the way that He blessed them? Forget about it. He should have blessed me more. I go to church on Sundays. I read my scripture. I love Him. He could have given to me what He gave to others. Our problem really shows up in our relationship with God. And this is part of the problem and the challenge with dealing with this issue called jealousy. A lot of times, we can admit we're angry. Like when I said how many of y'all have anger issues, a number of y'all, you smile. We know ourselves. Okay? Guilt, similar. So yeah, I walk around with guilt all the time. Greed, it's easy to kind of like look at myself. But jealousy, when we start talking about our jealousy, sometimes we feel petty. We say, like, I'm jealous of this person and that person, and we think those thoughts. This is one of the most challenging ones to talk about, one of the most challenging enemies, because we feel petty, we feel really small when we start talking about our jealousy. The irony of the whole situation is that the people that we're jealous of can't even fix our problems. They can't. If I'm jealous of Rafiq because Rafiq is great with technology, Rafiq can't fix my problem. It's my problem. Okay? You just can't. If I'm jealous of the church down the road because they have a full congregation and they have a huge building and all this stuff, they can't fix my problem. There's nothing they can do to fix my problem. Okay? And this is the challenge, is the people that we are jealous of. When we're jealous of our spouses, our kids, or our parents, some people are. Someone said to me, they said, this talk needs to be given in every single Egyptian church. Because we really struggle with jealousy and as a society. We see what other people have, we want it. We feel like, why didn't God give it to me? I'll give you another layer on top of it. In Egypt, where the main two religions are Christianity and Islam, and we see, sometimes, I've heard this from people, they see people who are Muslim that are successful, and they say, but we worship Jesus Christ. Like, why wouldn't He bless me more than those people? It's ingrained in us. And it happens the other way around as well. Okay? It's equal opportunity. The people that we're jealous of, they can't fix our problems. Your sister can't make you smarter. Your brother can't make you stronger. Your parents can't make you richer. Your neighbor can't make you more intelligent. Your boss can't make you a better programmer. We are directing it in the wrong place. And then comes the guilty pleasure. What do I mean by this? Have you ever been in a situation where you see someone who is doing really well, very successful, and they fail? They got the new car, you pull up, and got a ding on the side of the car. And you won't admit this publicly, neither will I, but we get a little bit of guilty pleasure. We feel good when we see someone that's successful, beautiful family, wealthy, doing well, and we find a little bit of pleasure. Not us, I mean the other people feel pleasure, okay? Those would be other people. It seems absurd to think that God owes us something. It is. How could He owe us anything? As Christians, we've grown up our whole lives feeling and being told that we owe God everything. That He created us, He gave us life. And we are actually the ones who are completely indebted to Him. And that's probably why our jealousy is so misdirected. I can't tell you how many times people sit in confession, come for counsel and guidance, and they struggle with jealousy, and they're just like, and it's one of those things they just continue to struggle with for years because they're misdirecting it. Their problem and who they're looking at is the wrong person. When we feel that guilty pleasure, doesn't fix it, right? Might feel good for just a moment, but it doesn't fix the problem. It doesn't take away those feelings inside of us, that jealousy. The jealousy is still there. The issue doesn't go away. We've heard of those people who wrestle with those thoughts. And of course, that's not you. But the reality is that none of us are safe. None of us is safe. Nobody's safe. Okay? Nobody's safe because there will always be someone richer, smarter, better looking, more godly, more talented. No, none of us is safe. There will always be someone more than us in something. Always. There will always be someone skinnier than you, someone bigger than you, someone smarter than you, someone who looks better than you, someone who's more successful, someone who's richer, someone who's... There will always be that. Always. There will always be someone more than us. And until we learn to deal with our jealous heart, we'll never be able to embrace the most basic Christian tenet, which is to love one another. We'll never be able to embrace that idea. Okay? Until I can deal with this jealousy, how am I going to love someone else who's doing better than me? I might be able to love people who are worse than me. Right? I might be able to love people who are in whatever category you want to say, like they're not doing as well as I am. I'll love those people like crazy. But people who are more successful than me, absolutely not. As long as jealousy goes unchecked, we won't be able to love. I'm telling you, I've seen husbands and wives that are jealous of one another, and as a result, can never pay a compliment to the other person in public. They can't. When we first got married, Maura and I first got married, I will never forget that I had moved up from Texas, and I moved up to Jersey, and Maura was really well connected here, and I felt like everywhere we went, it was Maura and that other guy. And anytime someone would say something positive, there was that jealous voice in the back of my mind, not wanting to acknowledge it. And I had to realize something. That this woman's my flesh. Anything that's positive that's said about her is a positive thing for us as a couple. Someone else just told me that in their family dynamic, one of them is a physician, the other one is not. So anytime invitations come, it says Dr. So-and-so and family. Being acknowledged, being recognized, being seen as good as or more than others is something that we find, it's a challenge that we have in families. We find it in sports teams. We find it in church ministries. We do. We find it in churches. If I were to sit here and tell you stories about jealousy that I have seen in churches, we'd be here till next week. Okay? But you're in church. It doesn't preclude any of us. No one is precluded from this. People will sit and say, but our church is better than their church, and their church is better than our church, and I've seen it between priests, and I've seen it between servants, and I've seen it between, it's an ugly thing. No one is precluded from feeling jealousy. When I was first ordained, I will never forget that one of my good friends who's also a priest, he was probably one of the most charismatic priests, great speaker, he connects well with people, and I found this little jealous voice in the back of my head saying, I just want him to fail. It's terrible. None of us is safe. None of us. It's one of the most, it kills us. I've seen it in corporations. When I was working in sales and marketing, that's probably one of the places that you will find it most in a corporation. Because you're competing against other people to see who's going to make more money, who's going to be recognized, who's the best salesperson, who's the best at whatever. And so we were kind of instilled in us, in corporate America, that when you see someone else doing better, you want to drag them down so that you can ascend. So we want to confront jealousy. Okay? We said jealousy is an ugly thing. We want to confront it. We want to deal with it. Okay? This is something like the other 4 enemies of the heart, or the other 3 enemies of the heart, that we can deal with. It's something that has been there from the beginning of time. We know about Cain's jealousy of Abel. We know about Esau's jealousy of Jacob, Joseph and his brothers. We know that Woody felt neglected and overlooked by Buzz when Buzz came along. Okay? Jealousy is something that has always been there, and it goes way back even further. Jealousy has been there from the time, it's the very, very first sin brought about. Jealousy and envy kind of similar. Okay? Jealousy, the slight difference is jealousy sees Albert has something, and I feel like God owes that to me. Envy says, he has something, I want it, and I don't want him to have it. Okay? So that's the slight distinction between jealousy and envy. The very first sin, what exactly happened? Satan, we're dating before Adam and Eve. Okay? The first deviation from the image of God, you find this cherub, this beautiful cherub, the highest of all of the angels, the ranks of angels. He had the most area of prestige, if you will, and honor in all of heaven behind God. And then humanity is created. And what happens when humanity is created? Satan looks and he sees that humans have a special place with God. Genesis 1:26 tells us that God created humanity in his image according to his likeness. And so for the first time, this cherub looks at humans and begins to feel jealous. He begins to feel jealous. And that's exactly why, if you remember, his issue wasn't with humans, it was with God. He says, you know what, if I can't get what I feel like I'm owed, I'm taking it myself. He takes his chair, his throne, and levels it with God. His problem was not with Satan, with humans. Initially it was with God, and that's why he said, you gave them something you should have given to me. And he takes his throne, we read this in Isaiah, takes his throne and puts it next to God. Elevates himself. Because because he felt like he was owed something. Then it turned to envy. Because after the fall, he says, you know what? If I can't have it, neither can they. Okay? So he saw what humans had, and he says, I want to take it from them. And that's when the deception happened in the garden. Okay? Jealousy and envy has always been there. These conflicts that happen in our relationship, James tells us, these conflicts, he says, where do wars and fights come from among you? He asks a simple question. And he oversimplifies it, and if you'll entertain the possibility of what he says here, that our conflicts, our jealousy, our anger, our resentment, all these things, he tells us that every conflict, he says, where do wars and fights come from? Because do they not come from your desires for pleasure that warn your members? He says, our fights, our jealousy, our issues, our anger, all these things come because we have we have desires for pleasure that warn our members. We have something that we want that we're not getting. Okay? When our children fight, those of you who are parents, you'll get this. When your children are fighting, it's not about where they're going to sit on the couch. Okay? It's not about the cookie. It's not about the cupcake. It's not about the who's going to be first, who's going to be last. It's not about any of that. The reason they're fighting is because they're not getting what they want. Okay? I want you to try this next time with your kids. Okay? Next time your kids are fighting, ask them a simple question. Do you know what the problem is here? I'm not getting what I want. And have them repeat it. And watch the level diffuse. The reason we fight and we warn our members is because we're not getting what we want. This is what James is telling us. Okay? Kind of trust a little bit of what James had to say. He was related to someone kind of famous. Okay? He says, you lust and do not have, you murder and covet and cannot obtain, you fight and you war. You murder. Maybe murder here was hyperbole. Maybe he was like using a big word to make an extreme statement. But think about something. Most murders, who's the first person that they go and they interview? Family and close friends. Okay? Because something has happened within that close family dynamic, that close family unit, and now there's a lot of times what happens is there's a jealousy or an anger that happens. Okay? Think back to OJ. OJ saw his wife, another man, and he felt this man had something that was owed to him. Okay? I know he was acquitted. Glove didn't fit. He must have quit. I get it. Okay? Usually in murder, that's the first place they look. Covetousness is simply someone constantly trying to meet a need that is not being met. And even when we get what we want, it's only a temporary fix. This is the beauty of appetites, right? When I'm thirsty, I take a sip. That was good. But it's only a temporary fix. And this is the problem with covetousness and jealousy. If we get what we want, it really only satisfies the appetite temporarily, right? That by definition is what an appetite is. You have a big appetite, you're hungry, you go, you eat, and it's temporary satisfaction, right? This is the reality. This is the nature of appetites, of cravings. And this is what James is speaking about. He's talking about our cravings. C.S. Lewis says the following. He says, the more you feed an appetite, the more it grows in intensity. The more we feed those appetites, the more we feed our lust, the more we feed our hunger for money and possessions, the more we feed our belly, the hungrier we get. Okay? The stronger our appetite becomes. And if you know, the more water you drink, I'm a water drinking machine. I've always got water in my hand. I constantly want more water. If you drink more water, you want more water. Okay? So the more and I'm not saying drinking water is bad. Okay? Drink water. Drink your 8 cups a day. Okay? What I'm suggesting to you is that the more we feed something, the more the appetite for that thing grows. Okay? Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes when we feed our appetite for God, our appetite for God grows. That's a good thing. But on the flip side, it's not always a good thing. Okay? Our desires, our bad desires, if you will, are not best dealt with by continuing to feed them. Verse 2, yet you do not have because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive because you ask amiss that you may spend it on your pleasures. You may spend it on your pleasures. What he's telling us is our problem here is that we're taking our desires for something, our want for something, and we're taking it into our own hands. Or maybe we're not taking it into anyone's hands. And what James is telling us here is that we should take these desires to the one who created the desires in the first place. Okay? The desires that you have may not be bad desires. They may be good desires. You desire to be successful. You desire intimacy with God and with your wife or your husband. You desire whatever it may be. You desire to continue to grow at your job. You desire to grow in godliness. These could be good things. You desire to be respected. So what James is telling us here is that we should take these desires and bring it before God. Who created the desires? James is telling us God did. Okay? So we should bring them. 1 Peter 5:7 says, cast all your cares upon him, for he cares for you. He says, the key word there, by the way, is all your desires. He's saying, bring every desire. I know sometimes we feel petty coming before God and saying, God, I want this new car. I want a better job. I want whatever it may be. We feel like it's petty. He says, bring every one of your desires before God. Everyone. Okay? He wants us to learn that sometimes he's going to say yes, and sometimes he's going to say no. And I think, guys, what he also wants us to learn is that sometimes we have to learn how to take no for an answer. Sometimes we're going to bring a request before God, and the answer is going to be no. And that's a good answer. And you know what? It's not a good answer. That's the best answer for us. So what's the way that we deal with jealousy? Okay? Every one of the habits, every one of the unhealthy habits, the enemies, the disease, had a way to cope with it. Right? We said that guilt came with confession. Anger, forgiveness, greed, generosity. How does one deal with jealousy? How do I deal with my jealousy towards other people when I feel God owes me what he's given to me? What's the answer? Attitude?
Gratitude.
Oh, gratitude. Close, yes.
Like happiness for them?
Excellent. Both of y'all just said, okay? Gratitude, happiness for them, celebrating them. Okay? And what I want to tell you is guys, if you want to overcome jealousy, the easiest way to do so is to celebrate the achievements of others. We're going to talk about what that means, because sometimes you look and you say, this is really hard. Like, how do I celebrate other people who I want to see them fail miserably? Okay? I would love to see this person completely get fired from this job and fall apart, their house burns down, not when they're inside of it. Okay? How do we celebrate those people when we see them and we don't have those feelings towards them? First thing to do is to start by thinking, who do I have jealousy and resentment towards? Okay? Where is my jealousy? Who is it first? Who is it coming out in or with? Maybe a sister-in-law, maybe a brother, maybe a family, whoever the person is, maybe a coworker. The first thing to do, and I know this seems like the 10 steps, the first thing to do is simply to acknowledge it. Is to recognize I'm feeling jealousy. I have jealousy. Okay? First step is always, by the way, acknowledging. Okay? So you might hear this 1,000 times in the years to come. Okay? The step one to ridding our hearts of jealousy is acknowledging the problem. The reason I resent this person has nothing to do with this person. It has to do that God has not given me what he's given this person. The first step to overcoming jealousy is not just acknowledging that I have jealousy, but is acknowledging that the reason I resent this person is because God has not given me what they've given that person. Okay? So in other words, I might first acknowledge that my problem is that I resent Joe because God has given Joe much better skin than he's given to me. Okay? All right? Fair? So that's the first step. Whatever your problem is, okay? Whatever the issue is, okay? First step, I would say, write it down. Okay? If you can't think out loud, if you can't think quickly or whatever, at home, I would say write it down. It might look like this. Mary, Mariana, Mariam, Marianne, all went to the movies without me, right? And that actually could happen, right? That actually could happen, okay? And they ran into Mina, Mark, Michael, and yeah. So they all went to the movies without me last week, and now they're not going to be my friend anymore. And why didn't God give me what He gave those people and allow me to be more social and fit in? Okay? So the first thing to do is to understand that my problem is that I acknowledge that I resent that group of people or that person or a group as a whole because God has given those people something He hasn't given me. Okay? And if you want to be a little dramatic, it's fine. Okay? We're all a little bit dramatic sometimes, but acknowledge it and take it up to God. The second thing is just that, take it to God. Okay? The rest is actually simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. Okay? So once you've acknowledged it, take it to God and tell Him just how unhappy you are. Okay? That He should have been more considerate when He was passing out jobs. When He was passing out good looks. That He was passing out whatever it was. Okay? Tell Him, God, you should have been more considerate. Okay? I know this seems silly, but acknowledge it, take it to Him. You know what? He could have been. He could have been more considerate. He could have given you all those things. But He didn't. He didn't. Okay? The reality is if you really believe, when you go to God, and I think if you begin to say this, what you're going to realize is that this is really silly. Like this is like, it's really, I want to challenge you, try to go to God and say, God, you should have done this for me. You're going to realize real quick, like how silly you feel saying that to God. Okay? Most of us. Now, if you're still standing there, and you believe like God really does owe you something, I want to invite you, pick up the Bible and start reading from Matthew chapter 1, verse 1, all the way to the end of the New Testament, okay? And start from tonight, okay? Because we got deeper issues, okay? If at the end of that you realize like, I can't believe I would even think this towards God, we're on the good path. What we will find is in Hebrews chapter 4, it says, we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Saying there's nothing that you struggle with that you can't come before the high priest with. Nothing. Nothing. He was tempted with it. He was tempted. Remember what happened in the wilderness. The devil takes him up and says, look at all of these lands. Aren't you the king? Aren't you the Son of God? Aren't you? They can all be yours. Okay? There's nothing that we can't come before our high priest and say, God, I really struggle with this. I struggle with jealousy. I do. And I want to have victory and grace over this. This last part is probably the most challenging part, but it's the most important part to complete the cycle. The third part is that we begin to celebrate. Begin to celebrate other people. Once you've wrestled your jealousy down to the mat with God, acknowledge it, brought it before Him in prayer, start celebrating other people. Sometimes you might say, listen, how do I celebrate someone that I don't feel it towards? Okay? I don't feel happy for these people. I don't. Okay? What I would tell you is you have to first do the first two parts before celebrating them. Third part is, I'm not asking you to lie. I'm not asking you to go to the person and say, man, that's a really beautiful dress, when you really think it's an ugly dress, okay? I'm telling you, if you think it's a beautiful dress, but you don't want to tell her it's a beautiful dress because you're jealous, because she looks good in it, I'm saying just go to her and tell her it's a beautiful dress, you look great, okay? If you see someone who did well at something, and you don't want to acknowledge it, that's a different story. That's because of jealousy. I'm not telling you to say something you don't believe. I'm telling you to say something that you believe, even if you don't feel it. Okay? And that's where celebration comes in. What you will find is that when you begin to celebrate, after acknowledging it and taking it to God, celebration is one of those habits that will stretch your heart. It'll challenge you. It'll be tough. The first few times it'll be really difficult. I'm telling you, that good friend of mine, when I started celebrating his work, one of the girls that sent me a message recently, it's because she had heard a talk at a conference that she went to. And I sent that message right away to that priest friend of mine. Just told him, man, I'm so thankful for the work that God is doing in your life. Take every opportunity to guard my heart from having jealousy towards anyone. Okay? So when we're able to come and celebrate other people who are more successful, better, whatever it is than us, what we're saying is, God, the work that you're doing in this person's life, or that you've done in this person, I celebrate your work in this person's life. And we're beginning not just to celebrate the person, but we're celebrating God and His presence among His people. We're celebrating, like one of the things that I'd like for us as a church to do is to be able to celebrate when other churches do things well. And I'll be honest, I see this oftentimes in ministry, that like other churches might do something really well, and because we want to prop ourselves up, when I say we, I mean like we as people and churches and ministries and all that, oftentimes we won't even acknowledge it. Okay? We won't acknowledge that they're doing something really well. All we can see is faults. What I'd love for people to look at our community and say, those people are, and they might not know the words that we're celebrating them, they'll just see that we love to love other communities and see the good work that God is doing in their lives. Okay? Guys, I would love for the whole church to be able to celebrate when someone's life, like when someone in our church begins to grow in ministry, that we celebrate that person. And I'm not talking about false honor and honor of men. I'm talking about just celebrating the work of God in people's lives. Okay? When someone gets married, we celebrate those people. When we see a church doing something really, really well, and being successful, bringing people to God, we celebrate the work of God in those churches. Okay? I think it's so much easier and so much healthier to celebrate the work that God is doing in people's lives than it is to walk around with a resentful heart. And quite frankly, that's what God intended us for. God created us to celebrate. God created us for this abundant, joyful life. I want you to think like when the Samaritan woman, when she repented, must have been a day of celebration. Must have been a day of celebration. And then people started coming to Jesus and saying, that woman, you told her this, she came and told us about you. If it was one of us, forgive me, we might have lived, oh, don't listen to that woman. Come, let me tell you. Come, let me tell you. That woman, she didn't know what she was talking about. Come on, don't forget what she was just doing. We want to celebrate when we see God doing anything good in someone's life. Okay? It is one of the best qualities that you'll find in your life, and that you'll find that you'll want to surround yourself with people that are like able to celebrate and rejoice, as Paul says, mourn with those who mourn and rejoice with those who rejoice. If you see someone doing well, congratulate them. Okay? We don't have any high schoolers in here, or college. We have some college folks in here. One of the things that I would love to see is like when you see someone doing well, celebrate their accomplishments. If you have a high school kid, and one of their best friends gets into the school that your kid wanted to go to, and they both applied, the other kid got in, encourage them to celebrate that child. Okay? It's so important that we look for every opportunity to get rid of the jealousy in our hearts. It can be a destructive force. Last thing I want to say here is don't wait until you feel like celebrating. Celebrating until you feel it. Okay? Don't wait until you feel like it. Because if you wait until you feel like it, it's never going to come. Remember way back when 4 weeks ago we said that the heart, when a person has a heart attack, they go to the doctor says, you got a heart problem. If you don't start exercising, you're going to die. Person says, listen, fix my heart, and then I'll start exercising. It doesn't work like that. You need to start, if you want your heart fixed. You got to start, okay? So I really want to encourage you, for jealousy, acknowledge it first, that it's not a me, this other person, it's a me, God issue. My issue's with God. Second thing is I want to bring it to Him, acknowledge it, pray about it to Him. Third thing is I want to begin celebrating the good things that God is doing in people's lives. Just as a reminder, when we talked about the arteriogram, if this message, or any of the other 4 messages that you've heard, left you some heart pain as you were thinking about it, left you frustrated, left you questioning, wondering, left you uncomfortable, left you wanting to throw something at me, then listen to that message. Because quite frankly, the Holy Spirit is speaking to you and ministering to you. Okay? We'll stop there if there are any questions. Any questions?